Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 11 of Wowhead Weekly. We have had one heck of a week of Warcraft news this week. And as ever, we've got my co-host Peculiar, so Perk. This week, we have had spoiler videos just before we started the show. We've had news on the Mist Legendary. We've had news on the Warlords Legendary.
And the beta patch.
Two beta patches.
I don't even remember.
Yes. Oh my god, yeah. So it's been a heck of a week.
Shocking announcements too with the that we're not even tied to data mining.
Exactly. And more importantly than all of that, you seem to have got a new Murloc.
Yes, I do.
So which one? It's the far left one. Yeah.
I'm very happy you can see all four of them.
It's like your little Murloc kickline, yes. Little can thing going on. That's awesome. Which is that's all of the Blizzard Gear store, right?
Yeah, they keep adding one every week, so I keep checking in to see if they still added one. And I think the blue one was from 2008, maybe?
Wow.
So I was very happy because I didn't really have enough, money at the time, being a student then, to just go buy Murlocs for fun, so I bought that instantly now that,
awesome.
A few years later, things are different.
Exactly, yeah. I got a little bit more money than as a student at the moment, so that's awesome. So, moving into the first thing this week, obviously, just before we started recording the show, Blizzard posted up this huge post with a ton of spoiler videos in it. So what exactly am I talking about with spoiler videos? Literally what it says on the tin. So they're the cinematic cutscenes, if you will, from various points in the game. Now, obviously, this section of the show may contain spoilers. We'll probably will discuss the content of the videos ever so slightly. So as ever, there'll be a little thing. I'm trying to do the fingers because it mirrors it for me. It's going to appear just here.
You should get the image in the videos, the little
exactly. We're going to put that there. We'll put that in.
Bot on the screen.
Yeah, worry about it. But what we're going to do is I'm going to put a little thing where my finger is here that's going to tell you the time it's safe to come back to miss any spoilers. Like, we're just going to skip you right past this whole section so you don't have any risk of spoilers at all. Like, it's hard for us as well to know exactly what people would consider a spoiler. So we want to be able to talk about it without worrying. So if you're worried about spoilers and you really don't want to hear anything about these videos, come back. We're doing it wrong again. Come back at this time. This time that's right here, and then you'll be safe from spoilers. And we'll talk about other stuff. It's going to be delightful. So, going into the spoilers then, we had videos for the Dark Portal intro and outro. We had the zone-ending cinematics for Shadowmoon, Frostfire, Nagrand, and Talador, and we had a collection of Garrison cinematics. So the first thing I noticed was the absence of cinematics for Gorgrond and Tanan.
Yeah.
So Tanan, to me, it seems kind of obvious because we've played through Tanan once or twice, me and Perk at this stage, as we talked about in the past. Once or twice, 10 or 15 times. So I feel like the Tanan stuff is quite cinematic-y already. So I don't think that we're missing anything. And I do think that the Dark Portal outro video is actually the awesome in-game event in Tanan.
Yeah, I think that I would agree with that. It's thematically.
Yeah, and it's really cool, by the way. And okay, this is definitely a spoiler. I said we weren't going to try not to do spoilers, and I'm straight in with one immediately. Because the whole time when you're running away to the docks, it's like, run away to the docks, run away to the docks. And I'm like, no, but I want to see them fire the giant gun that I just spent 10 minutes helping them set up. I want to see them fire the giant gun. And guess what's in the video? Just quietly. But the Gorgrond one is more interesting. Like, I'm not surprised to see one missing from the end of Tanan, but the Gorgrond one is more interesting. Like, what do you think is going on there?
It seems pretty experimental, at least questing through the sparring arena or your lumbermill path. You sort of go on two very different paths in the zone, so maybe, I don't know if it doesn't have one because the zone is so complex and it's, you would have to essentially do like two different endings to it. But yeah, I mean, maybe we'll see that soon, or who knows, maybe it wasn't ready, or I'm not sure why, but that zone, the paths for choosing your garrison outpost were more varied in Gorgrond than the other zones when questing.
Right. I wonder also, because it seemed to me in questing in Gorgrond that we very much stayed around the southern and the western area of the zone. I don't feel like we went very far into that real Iron Horde, like, fort, I call it almost, like sort of whole big encampment thing that's right up in the north.
There's a lot of weird exploration stuff there, which isn't really tied to questing, but it's like, there's a leafy jungle area with trees and rare spawns and events, and then by the Iron Horde area, there you can kill mobs in loot their head and get like a little statue in your garrison.
Yeah.
So it seems very much like almost like a sandbox, like you're just going around and discovering cool stuff as opposed to rigidly going on a quest path.
Yeah, I do wonder whether that sort of whole Iron Horde encampment thing is going to have more related content coming from max level players in something like patch 6.1.
I think that's like Craster, and you're like, oh, this is pretty, but it's kind of empty. And
yeah.
like, oh, here's this.
Oh, suddenly. Yeah, and I think, like, particularly, I think that they posted on the forums previously saying that the rest of Tanan would open up in patch 6.1 with level 100 content, talking about how it's like the Iron Horde mainstay in Pandaria and how that you know, wasn't going to be something that we were going to be rushing straight into. So I wonder if that's going to be associated, and whether actually the reason why there isn't end cinematics for those two zones is actually that we haven't reached the end of those two zones just yet.
I think it's a really good idea. I mean, those two zones are related thematically, and yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Definitely. So, Perk, your favorite moments from these videos, have you watched them?
Yeah, I did. So, as an Alliance player, I really like seeing Uriel, the female Draenei paladin, in the Shadow Moon and Talador ending ones. It was really also neat to compare them because you can see in Shadow Moon that she is discovering how to be a leader, and she's looking on sort of fearful but inspired. And Shadow Moon was super sad. And then in Talador, you know, she's gained more confidence, and it's, you know, really awesome to watch her, you know, kicking ass and having like good teamwork with the other Alliance ones, and everyone just being, you know, really awesome with light spells, saving each other. So I really like seeing her and just her character progression in those two cinematics.
Definitely. And it was really cool, like how, I don't know, and this is maybe a sort of a little bit of my own personal thing, is I love feeling like a kick-ass in games, like, yeah. And I love that she just went in there and killed that giant, like, orc guy with his Deathwing armor set.
I also loved how, when she was saving the orc, how when she threw her mace to distract him, then Durotan picked it up, and, you know, I just thought it was really cool, like, you know, the cross-faction weapon.
Yeah, it's like, it's reminiscent of that passing of the stick in the Mists of Pandaria cinematic. Cross-faction weapon, there you go, it's a stick and a mace. And for me, definitely, like, I sort of tweeted very cryptically about this, because I've been trying really hard not to spoil stuff for anybody. But I loved the Thrall versus Garrosh fight.
Yeah,
like
that is some food for thought in it. I'm curious to hear what you thought of it.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, like, obviously, I don't pretend for a second to be a huge lore nerd, but I just loved, like, the giant hand coming out of the ground. Like, that is an earth grab toad. Like, I want that animation for my earth grab
major
toad.
glyph.
Yeah, major glyph for an earth grab toad to turn it into a giant null, like, lava rock hand thing coming out of the ground and grabbing hold of people. Yeah, it was really cool. And I enjoyed the sort of, after we've seen a lot of, you know, big muscle orc stuff going on, and sort of throwing axes and stabbing pandas and all of that stuff, and, you know, the very orc craft cinematic with lots of muscles and axes and gun shows and that sort of thing. I was really happy to sort of see, I don't need strength. Like, that was cool to me. It's like, because I love the magical side of stuff, and it's cool to me to be like, yeah, you don't need to be a big manly, like, muscly orc to kill stuff. You can be a shaman with awesome earth rock hands and giant tornadoes, and that's just as effective. So that was fun. I can't comment on the lore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from sort of a lore perspective, it made me pause when Garrosh was like, hey, you know, you put me in charge, then you went off and did other stuff, so
it's a reasonable criticism.
You're sort of responsible for putting me in this situation.
Yeah.
And it, you know, it did make me think, because everyone likes to think that Thrall's like the good guy and he's always, you know, leading things, but, you know, like, it was a questionable leadership choice, and Garrosh didn't get a ton of guidance from Thrall, I feel, after the, you know, the torch was handed over. So, you know, it was sort of, I was like, oh, you know, Thrall's being a badass, and that's great, but then you're like, well, he didn't really seem to show remorse for what I thought was sort of true on Garrosh's end. So I thought that it makes them both interesting, because, you know, Garrosh does have a point, and Thrall is this hero, but he's not recognizing that maybe he messed up along the way. So it makes them more interesting instead of, you know, the hero and the villain. Yeah,
that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I sort of hadn't made that association necessarily on my first watch through it, because I was distracted by the hand, honestly. But yeah, it's a really good point. And it's nice to see Thrall in something other than a Mr. Perfect Green Jesus, as people took to calling him, role. That's kind of refreshing. So obviously the other thing we kind of need to talk about with these is this is kind of unprecedented from Blizzard,
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, they said in the notes, they're like, people can see these people usually in the past, they see something in game or they dig up the file and they present and they go, oh my God, so cool. And then people take it out of context and assume that, for example, Stormwind is in ruins or something totally bizarre.
Yeah.
So I guess they want to, sort of take more control about how they present things to the players and have the initial impression of players be what they want them to be as opposed to taking things, out of context or control.
Definitely, yeah. And I feel like it's a sort of a definite thing of wanting to exercise control over when these things come out, because obviously people will see them out of like the first person to find those in the beta and be able to record them, and they may well go in at some point. Like we don't know whether they're in the next build. Like we obviously haven't seen them in any previous builds, but we definitely don't know when they're going to be added. And they could be added at any time. And if someone takes those completely out of context, or like Perk said, scenes out of context, this is just a way for Blizzard to control the release of this in a way that they feel comfortable with. And I really, really appreciate, like obviously we've spoiler warning this, so it's sort of spoilers on spoilers on spoilers, but they've really made it hard to accidentally view the videos, is I guess what I'm saying. I suppose some like more unscrupulous people might want to like dump the link directly to the video after the gate into their posts or something, but they've even got it so that when you show the video up, like we've got them on Wowhead, they don't even show the title. So if you really don't want to know,
that's really good what they did.
Yeah, it's really smart. So basically, if you are going to watch them, then if you're watching this section of the show, you're going to watch them maybe. So there's a thing where you actually have to click a link within the video that takes you then on to the video which has the actual spoilers in it. So that's really good. But it's definitely like it's a bone of contention, and people are already unhappy about it on Twitter, which was inevitably going to be the case, that people are sort of sad to see this happening.
I mean, but I think it's better this way than, for example, being like, oh, there's this video of Stormwind that Shaw infested. Why haven't I seen the beta yet that Stormwind is in ruins? Like, where's my capital city?
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's actually a vision that Garrosh has in the middle of Siege of Hogmar. So, I mean, I think it's sort of it's not perfect, but I think it's a more elegant compromise than having people left to their own devices post things either out of context or getting confused. Like, suppose someone made a screenshot gallery and like messed up all the screenshots and like, oh, the Talidor thing's in the Grand. And, like, oh, what's happening here? So, I mean, it's new. I know that new things are scary, but I think that I like Blizzard sort of posting more stuff about the beta. People throughout this beta have been like, why isn't Blizzard posting about my garrison? Like, why aren't they posting about, like the raids? Like, what's going, like, I want my zone previews. So I think it's good they're actually presenting us with something now.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that completely. And I also think it's worth saying, like, if you're really upset about this, don't watch them. Like, it's not always easy to completely avoid spoilers on things, but like if you're really concerned about having this content spoiled, then definitely obviously don't watch the videos, and then maybe just take a short holiday from reading WoW Twitter or reading things, like, because there's always going to
just mute a few words.
Exactly, mute a few words on TweetDeck or on Twitter itself. Like, there's, for all of your friends who are being good and trying really hard not to spoil stuff for you, there's always going to be that one guy who just gets overexcited about grabby hands coming out of the earth and just post something that somehow leads you to spoilers. So
yeah, and honestly, like, if you've quested on the beta, you sort of know what happens in the cinematics. So while I guess if you aren't in the beta or you haven't been paying attention to news, this could be different. But I feel like like, wow, Twitter is pretty on top of things, and like if you've completed the Shadow Moon questline, like, what happens in the last one. Or, like, after you see that awesome cutscene flash, you sort of go back to the characters talking. So you can pretty much fill in the dots what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
How stylish it looks.
Exactly. And there's obviously also sort of little bits and bobs in there, little nuggets of extra information, which are fun to find out. But the vast sort of overall thing has been out there for a long time. But yeah, honestly, I think it's a cool step. I kind of look forward to them doing this for more stuff and keeping the high level of spoiler protection there for those people who just don't want to see it. But we have got so much to talk about this week. We need to keep it moving. We've got to keep it moving. So we found out now about a bunch more stuff this week that's going away in patch 6.0. So we have had a guide up for, 3 weeks now?
Yeah, maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks now.
And we keep adding stuff to it.
Exactly, yeah.
So we're telling more stuff that's going away.
Yeah. We're adding more and more stuff to this guide of things to do before patch 6.0, you know, preparing for patch 6.0, getting the stuff done that you need to get done because it's going. So we found out this week about a bunch more things that are actually going away. So the first one, which we're going to talk about, is the Justice Point heirloom vendors are actually being deactivated. They're going on holiday. They're taking a nice little vacation, presumably, I don't know, going to that beach where Johnny Bravo hangs out and has out little goblin drinks or whatever, and chilling out there for a while. So they're actually being taken out of the game. So if you want to buy your heirlooms for Justice Points, you're going to need to do it before patch 6.0 because they're actually going away.
As like a sort of side tangent, Justice Points are being removed completely in the patch. So a lot of people previously were told, hey, you know, what's going to happen when this currency goes away? And they were told, oh, they're going to cost gold instead. And on the beta, we've been seeing these heirlooms cost gold instead, and people were like speculating like, oh, you know, get exalted with this faction, so they're cheaper. But those heirlooms are not sticking around for gold either. Like the vendors are just gone. You can't buy them for Justice Points or gold. And this only affects the PvE heirloom. So if you want like a PvP heirloom, you can still get that with honor. If you want the guild heirlooms, you can still get them from the guild vendors. This only affects the PvE ones, and they're not removed completely. You can still get them with Dark Moon tokens or the Argent tournament system. And we have guides on Wowhead for both of those world events, so you're not totally
Exactly.
lost.
You're not completely alone. You're not sort of completely out of luck if you want some heirlooms. And honestly, the PvP ones are just as easy to get, even doing PvE. If you actually, I'll try really hard. I'm going to make a note to myself right now, so excuse me doing this, to link the guide to honor point earning in Mists of Pandaria, because it is so easy to earn honor points in PvE right now that if you really need heirlooms, you're probably faster doing it with honor points. Like, you don't need to PvP to get honor points right now, just because of the way that stuff's working.
Yeah, just like kill a few rare spawns.
Exactly, rares, quests, the Isle of Thunder dailies, they earn a ton of honor points. So if you want heirlooms, that's honestly one of the better ways to do it. But we've also got some interesting news about the Brawlers Guild, right? So that's another thing that's being temporarily removed in patch 6.0.
I had mentioned in the guide that, you know, on that there was going to be a season 2 for Brawlers Guild. So there was like Mists of Pandaria, and then all the bosses were being retuned to level 100. And there was like a special new ring that ported you to Stormwind, and you could collect like the mount and stuff again if you grind it up. But I didn't realize, and now I do from the patch notes, that you cannot access the Brawlers Guild in that in-between, you know, October to November period. So, you know, if you want to get your achievements and stuff out of the way, you should do it now.
Definitely.
If you're worried that when Warlords hits, you'll have too much to do and can't touch Brawlers Guild for a while. So, you know, again, we have a guide to Brawlers Guild. Nothing is actually going away. So it's not like, oh, I can't get my title again. I can't get the mount. I can't get the... Actually, one thing is going away. But all these things are not going away. With the heirloom thing, the fist weapon is not going to be available because that right now costs Justice Points.
Right.
So, and I guess because there's no, you know, Dark Moon or Argent Tournament equivalent for it, it just was simpler to not have the fist weapon for now. But Blizzard has been really good about putting items back in. Like when people said that the offhands from Justice Point vendors were, you know, like, oh, you know, they're not on the Dark Moon Fair vendors, like, we can't get our offhands anymore. Blizzard said they were going to stick them on additional vendors. So maybe they'll do something for Brawlers Guild in the future.
Yeah, quite possibly. And so Brawlers Guild is coming back in. It's being retuned for the new talents, and it's also for level 100. So it's not disappearing. It's just going to change slightly. And if I understand it correctly, you can't even access those rooms, right? Those portals that let you into the actual rooms are being shut down.
I'm not sure because I was still able to access it. I mean, maybe you could just, I don't know, hang out or chill, you
just
know, atmosphere,
socialize.
You can't actually be, you know, earning and killing stuff in that interim period. And I mean, even if they did, I don't think you'd get very far. If they
if they were tuned. Yeah, that would be pretty hard. So the really big thing that we have heard about this week that's going away in the patch 6. In Warlords of Draenor, excuse me, a bit more accurate, Warlords of Draenor, is the legendary cloak questline. Now, this is a little controversial. It's not the first legendary to be removed from the game. It's one of just a few.
It just feels really different.
It feels really strange to me as well. Yeah, for sure. Like, while it's definitely not the only one that it's ever happened with, it's definitely one of the only recent ones, and it's definitely just feels strange. Like, it's been this epic quest that's been like, it's so woven into the story of Mists of Pandaria.
Yeah, like, I mean, the example was ATS, which was removed, but it was removed at the end of Burning Crusade when Naxxramas was getting a total revamp for Wrath. So it made sense because that content was going away. And I know that ATS had some, cool parts to it, like going to old Scholomans and having to like go to AQ, but even that didn't seem as sort of embedded in the lore of the expansion as the Mists of Pandaria Cape. Yeah. And this was just like, you have to do it in the expansion, and then it's gone. And as I was doing all this database work, being like, oh, make sure to stick on this page that this isn't available after a certain date, like hide these quests, remove these items, etc. I was like, man, this is just like a lot of stuff that's going on.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
So much effort was put into it. And I'm just like, people like doing old stuff for fun, like I'm running Dragon Soul every weekend and someone is always going around there to, get the stuff for Fangs of the Father, for example.
Exactly.
And people like doing stuff like this.
Yeah, like I got...
Why are you removing content?
I know, like why take it away? So much work went into it. Like I started a new US account just a year ago because I moved to the States. So it's obviously easier to play WoW in an account where you have servers which are on the same continent as you, that's advantageous. And then I was, I had obviously my EU account which had a ton of stuff on it, which I can't transfer any of that over. So I started doing things like I wanted to get Dragon Wrath on my priest because, my EU priest has Dragon Wrath, and I wanted to go get it because it's, there's a cool thing and it's a cool quest line and it's fun and you kill dragons and you do stuff and it's just a really fun thing to do. And I had a great time. Like, funny enough, I enjoyed it a lot more when I was going through it and not having to like completely progress through raids to get the items again. And it was really fun, and it reminded me of Cataclysm and, maybe not the optimum raid in the game or maybe not the very best of PvE content, but I enjoyed it and I had fun doing it, and I'd do it again. And like
I don't see, like, there's so much cool stuff with like Rathian, and it's like all this stuff about him is just gonna be lost.
Yeah, so, exactly. It seems so strange from a sort of story perspective, and to me it's just making really like no sense. I don't understand why they're removing it. Like, I just can't quite get my head around it.
Yeah, and just the messaging, like we've gotten so many messages about the, hey, there's an in-game holiday, you can, get your legendary faster, drop rates increased. And it never was mentioned this was going away.
Yeah, that's...
So I feel that they should have
said this at some point, maybe when they started introducing the buffs, like just to sort of say, oh, by the way, you are going to want to actually take advantage of these buffs because it's going aww in Warlords of Draenor. Yeah,
because I know some people are all like, oh, well, I'll just wait till like Test of Valor.
Well, that's what I was thinking, that's what I was... I sort of have said many times I don't have a legendary cloak, and I was thinking, oh, well, once the Test of Valor requirement's gone, I'll just do it then, like it wasn't a sort of huge, well, I must do it right now. It was just a sort of, oh, well, that'll make it easier. Why not? It just seems like less of an not insurmountable, but less of a difficult thing to do without that 3-week period where you're having to earn Valor points and cap out every week. And so I was one of those people thinking that, or I was thinking, oh, well, I'll do it in Warlords of Draenor when I'm able to go back and...
tech for people to like go do LFR with just like a group of friends. Yeah. So it's like, oh, like you could just sort of grind out cloaks together.
Yeah, exactly. Go grab some
time.
Exactly. And the cool animations, like the fun animations on the cloaks are really nice. And yeah, I'm kind of sad. Like, I mean, honestly, I'm not complaining because I did it to myself. I could have got that cloak at any point in the expansion. And admittedly, making a completely new account on a different region hasn't helped me in that. And, leaving my old raiding guild behind in the EU halfway through Throne of Thunder with a character that I had progression on for the legendary cloak hasn't helped with that. It's all, but it's my own fault. I had 2 years to do it and I haven't done it. But nonetheless, I'm a little bit sad because I kind of wanted the awesome animations. And
I wonder why they did it. I mean, I have 2 ideas. The first is that as we're seeing all this dungeon loot, I'm like, would the cape be overpowered because it comes with a socket? It has a guaranteed socket, and items in Warlords don't have guaranteed sockets. It's got this cool proc. I guess the proc could be weaker at higher levels, but it's still an extra thing.
Yeah.
And the cape has, a lot of secondary stats on it. It's not just like, oh, here's an item with like agi and crit. It's like, here's an item with like agi and crit and mastery and haste.
Yeah.
So maybe they figured that it would still be sort of overpowered for things like, I don't know, even her, dungeon gear, or maybe
Maybe.
it would have like a situational use in raids even, and they don't want to deal with that sort of balancing going forward, or having a new player confused and being like, oh, I'm new to stuff and I need to get this orange cape to do well as I'm starting off. So that's the first idea. But I think they could probably have tweaked the levels if it was too overpowered. And people already have them, so if they're overpowered, then we'll still have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But maybe they try to do something, I don't know, exclusive with it to sort of counteract the complaints that everyone has a legendary. Like maybe this was an experiment and they want to try something, else in the future. They want this to be like an expansion-based thing, and you have all these rewards and then they're going away, and then it makes this legendary feel more special than like, oh, everyone got this in LFR.
Yeah, that's definitely both like two very good theories. I sort of feel like the excuse that they've given, and I like that I say excuse rather than reason, that's perhaps unfair. But the reason that they've given is that they wanted it to be like an open and shut thing with the expansion, that it's so tied into the expansion that it makes sense to do that, and that they wanted to, like, they put in the post like when one door closes, another door opens, which is like the worst excuse for taking away content.
It's like the sort of, I mean, it's like with challenge modes, like, oh, like surprise, there's like a season 1.
Yeah, exactly.
They told us that back in March. Like people had a lot of time to get their challenge mode done.
Definitely, yeah. And I don't know why they didn't communicate this sooner. Like, that to me is the biggest failing here, is that like there is still, I mean, people who are far smarter than me, like Perk, have been working out the maths of it and deciding, there is still time to get a legendary cloak if you start now. If you are in the position like the position I'm in, where you thought, oh, I actually might quite like one of those and I never did it for some reason, then get started. Like, don't hang around and wait. And they have clarified that the test of valor, which is being removed in 6.0, if you are on the quest already, that requirement will just go away and you'll be able to complete that chapter of the legendary quest chain.
So we should clarify that. So if you have already started on any part of the legendary quest line, when that pre-patch hits in most likely October, you can still continue working on that quest line.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you don't finish the entire quest line before Warlords hits, you will not get that cape. So you can't be like 75% of the way through and then Warlords hits and you're like, oh, let me finish the other 25. Like, if you're on it, you can finish it before Warlords. But if you have not started it at all, you can't pick it up after that pre-patch and start from scratch. Yeah,
it's really important to understand that. I don't think they've done a great job of messaging that really, really abundantly clearly. So right now, up until patch 6.0, you can still start the legendary quest, and you've also got the Gaze of the Black Prince to help you with your progression.
Yeah.
Come 6.0, Gaze of the Black Prince goes away. Like, it's literally Gaze of the Black Prince, which is the Black Prince rep buff and also the item drop buff, is literally running from now until 6.0, which, obviously, given that they've been saying a month before, we're expecting kind of mid-October.
Yeah.
So, it's the 19th of September today. You've got until, let's say, for sake of argument, the 15th of October to get that done and, pick up the quest, get started on it with the Gaze of the Black Prince there to help you. Test of Valor is going away in 6.0, so you no longer need to do the grinding out of the Valor points in 6.0. There may be merit in actually doing it before that, so don't necessarily wait, because once 6.0 hits, the Gaze of the Black Prince buff is gone, and you only have until the 13th of November to get that done.
So
and it's
you
likely
can
to be
progress, but it'll be slower without the buff.
Precisely, yeah. You can still progress, but it's going to be slower. So your drop rates on the Titan Runestones are going to be slower, on the Sigils are going to be slower, etc., etc. So it's definitely still, you're able to progress with the quest, but it's definitely going to be a lot slower. And honestly, I would say do as much as you can now, because it's RNG. It's RNG stuff towards the end of that quest line, and you don't want to be that guy on the 12th of November who's only got 11 Titan Runestones.
Right.
Don't hang. I understand people wanting to wait until Test of Valor goes away, but remember that the Gaze of the Black Prince is going too. So if you want to get a legendary cloak, get your act in, get your ass into gear, so to speak. But one really important thing to note, with 6.0, Jeremy Muffinus Fiesel has confirmed on Twitter that the Ordos requirement is going in 6.0 So
you can finally kill Ordos and hope
get my hat!
Even though it might not be that useful in Warlords. But
I can still get it. I can finally get my hat. And I knew I knew it would be lifted at some point. When the hats were first, the funniest like story aside, when the hat was first announced, it was announced in another show. We talked about it in another show I did, and the week previous to that, Bashiok had been in the chat on that show, which doesn't exist anymore, giving me jip for saying that the legendary cloak requirement on a world boss was stupid, and I still think it was stupid. I still think it was a bad idea, and like I was really annoyed about it, and I was saying so in the show, and then the next week we had the announcement of the items and that they would be on this boss that was locked behind the legendary quest chain, and I said at the time it will be lifted, that requirement won't last forever, and I'm happy to be right. So if you're just literally doing it to get a Warforged item for whatever reason or to kill Ordos, then I can imagine that's probably a relatively small group of people, but fear not, Ordos is accessible to everyone. I wonder if they're going to mend the bridge.
Yeah, how that would be bad. Yeah, let's get our free Ordos loot.
Yeah, exactly, and fall to our death. So yeah, that's a little bit of good news at least. And it's also worth mentioning that they are adding a kind of cool title in Warlords of Draenor. We found this in the second of 2 beta builds this week.
Yeah.
So they're adding this Legend of Pandaria title. It is going to be, looks like from Perk was able to go onto the beta and actually pick it up right away. Was it automatically awarded to you? How did it work?
Yeah, it was automatically awarded because I already finished chapter 5 and I could just wear it. I should test to see if it was account-wide or not. People were asking me, so I should just log on another pre-made and see if it shows up in the list or not. But yeah, it's a pretty cool title. I know a lot of people were like asking me like, hey, I finished this quest line. Like, can I have something flashier than killing Ordos? Like, I want an extra thing.
Yeah.
So now people have their extra thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's nice, particularly like in light of the removal of the quest line and the removal of everything that goes with it. I think it's nice to have that little badge of like, if they're marketing it as an I was there, it's nice to have that little badge to show off to other people that you were there. Definitely. Yeah, so that's pretty fun. So speaking of legendary quest lines, there's a lot of legendary stuff going on in this show. We mentioned, I've just had a poster fall down. That's exciting. Let me pull that all the way off so that's not sitting there being like, there we go. Okay. So last time we actually spoke about the data mined rings, which we'd found some rings in the data that were sort of we thought they were associated with the legendary quest chain, and we postulated that they would be sort of doing little different things and tying them in and giving them upgrades, and it turns out in this build that we were precisely correct. So in this build the whole first chapter is completable, so you can do the whole first chapter. It's pretty hard work and it's kind of time consuming, but it is definitely possible to complete it. A friend of ours from a site called Adriacraft has already done it because he's very, very, very into the legendary stuff and he's already done it. So it's definitely all in there and completable. So the first chapter, it starts in your garrison, right? Which has caused some discussion.
Yeah, so it starts in your garrison. Khadgar's servant is there. If you've played the Burning Crusader, done stuff in Shadrath, you'll remember he is the extremely slow elemental that gives you the 8-minute tour around Shadrath. Yes. And he has made his way to your garrison, and he has a quest for you to go visit Khadgar. Now, people are worried if this will make the garrisons mandatory, but we tested it on several characters, and if you make your level 1 garrison, it doesn't have to be max level, you just have to have a garrison, and he'll give you the quest. So, there's like a little bit of questing involved, maybe like 10 quests or so, but you don't have to like build a garrison and then level it up and do all this stuff to it. It's just do the initial stuff, and then you can pick up this quest.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really like, I would say, very maximum 20 minutes of gameplay to actually go from no garrison to a garrison, or enough garrison to get this guy to show up for you. Like, it's almost, I wouldn't say it's impossible to avoid it or impossible to miss it, let me correct myself, because you could totally like decide to just go straight into dungeon leveling or leveling via PvP, which, is something that I've done a ton of times, and you just don't see that first initial zone at all. But if you've done that, it's like I would estimate it would take a normal, relatively geared player from Mists of Pandaria to maybe 15 minutes, 20 at the most, to actually just get a garrison and get the slow, leisurely walk elemental to show up and give you a legendary quest. So I don't think there's any real fear there that people are going to be really upset, unless you just want to not have a garrison at all, in which case you're kind of out of luck because you will need a garrison to get this quest. So we've got the whole first chapter, and we've seen a little bit of what the sort of stuff is. It's not too RNG based in the first chapter, right?
Yeah, and there's no raiding involved. So it just is doing some heroic dungeons and then some solo play, and there's some lore involved. So, you can pretty much get it done on your own time. You don't have to like brave LFR, find a group of 10 people to get some raid item. It seemed like it's a good first step, and you get this eye level. Well, if you do the very early step, you can get an eye level 640 ring, which is like LFR quality from Heimdall. So that's pretty good for just having a clear a dungeon. You get an awesome ring for doing that's equivalent to a raid.
Yeah.
And then if you do the heroic dungeons and some more of the solo questing and challenges, you get an eye level 680 ring, which is equivalent to heroic loot from Heimdall. So that seems to be a pretty good deal as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's nice to see them, like we were talking previously about how they might reward us given how they did it with the legendary quest chain and Mist with things like the meta gem and so on and so forth. So it's interesting to see that coming about. And it seems to be mostly upgrades of the rings, because we've data mined several different item levels of these rings, right? Yeah. So we've got
we have 640 and then 680 for associated like chapter 1 quests. And then we have a 690 and I believe a 710 version. And they have like the same names but upgraded, and they also have these procs attached to them that increase your primary stat by either 10 or 15%, so like agi, strength, or intellect.
Yeah.
And we're speculating that like, we know that there's going to be more legendary stuff in Heimdall and Blackrock Foundry, so those rings could be rewards for a later part in the quest line that hasn't been fully data mined yet.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't really know a ton about what exactly you're going to have to do in the latter parts. All we do have is the sort of the titles of them. There's like some information, like it looks like you're going to be working with Khadgar and Blackhand. There's something about saving Khadgar's life, but we don't know very much about them just yet at this point. And yeah, there are definitely collection items, but we don't know where they're going to be coming from. We don't know exactly what you're going to have to do to pick up those items. But excuse me, we can see that there are items there which you will need to be collecting, not dissimilar to the first one. But yeah, so ton of information there on the Warlords of Draenor legendary to sort of somehow slightly compensate people who were sad about the Mists of Pandaria one. The other big piece of news we had this week was this. It was more a big piece of news. The other piece of news we had this week was more kind of a piece of news because of the reaction to it than because of the post itself. So Blizzard released this post.
I try to forget about it.
Oh my god, yeah. Released this post that was talking about the problem which occurs if you are someone who really, really loves the physical collector's edition. So not the digital deluxe, but the physical collector's editions of games like World of Warcraft. So obviously they aren't going to ship those out to you before the release date. You've got to pick up an actual box of computer game at a shop or buy it online and have it shipped to you. So if you're in the position of really, really wanting that physical collector's edition and also wanting a level 90 upgrade, you find yourself in a slightly sticky situation. So Blizzard released this post, and like, I'm not a huge collector's edition fan, but I know so many people who are, and I saw the title of this post, I was like, oh, they've done something to help those poor people out because they can get their level
upgrading.
Their upgrade. So, okay, I assumed that what they were going to do was something along the lines of if you bought the collector's edition of D3 after you already had the annual pass, where they sort of evened it out with game time. So it seemed like it would be an easy thing to do to, say, right, okay, the difference in cost is X, and we're going to give you X amount of game time to compensate you for the fact that you already bought a copy. So you're just going to have to give us, either like they've never been a big into refunding people, so they're not going to say, all right, we'll refund you. You buy this whole collector's edition, we'll refund you your $50 for your standard edition.
Yeah, they've done other stuff, like you mentioned with the
And I just thought that they would be doing something like that, like give us game time, give us BattleNet balance, so people can use it to buy Hearthstone cards, mounts, pets, whatever. But no, the actual
You can upgrade your
solution.
account by buying another one.
Exactly. Oh, what a brilliant solution. Well done, guys. It's like you can
You can give
get
it to a friend.
oh, you can get a new Warlords of Draenor Collector's Edition, having already bought the Warlords of Draenor Standard Edition by buying the Warlords of Draenor Collector's Edition. So the only difference from the old situation, which was exactly that, is that they're now giving you a key to. So say I bought Standard Edition, and then I'm like, right, I'm going to go get the Collector's Edition, and they would then put the Collector's Edition on my account, so I get all the shiny, fun stuff from the Collector's Edition, and they're also going to give me then a key for the Collector's Edition, which I could then give to Perk. Say, here, Perk, have a Standard Edition of Warlords of Draenor because I got the Collector's Edition.
Then I want the collector's edition, so that we just have more and more.
Well, then we just have more problems, and it's just like, okay, so you're meant to find someone to offload this standard edition key onto and hope that you recoup your $50 somewhere along the line.
Good for, numbers of people who have bought Warlords of Draenor.
Yeah, all the collector's edition people are buying too. It's just like, it was so surprising to me that this was the solution.
Yeah, just the way it was worded. It wasn't like, hey, because of technical stuff, this is the only way you can acquire a boost if you've already bought this edition. It's just like, look, an upgrade. Like, it was totally marketed as an upgrade, and that's not how upgrades work, except for item upgrades in WoW.
Yeah, exactly.
Twice as much valor, and then your item gets upgraded twice as much.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's a very, very silly solution. I doubt we're going to see any sort of movement from them on this. I wouldn't be surprised just to see this post because kind of being swept away now and not really talked about again. And I don't think that we're going to see it change until maybe the 7.0 collector's edition. They might come up with a way to turn it into Battle.net balance, or turn it into game time, or any other solution that they want to bring in. But this certainly isn't what I would call a solution to this problem.
No. Just sort of stating the obvious, if you buy the game, then you have the game.
Yeah, exactly. You can give the game to a friend now, so that's something. Or sell it on eBay, I guess, if you want to, if that's your thing. So every week in this show, moving on, we do a little section on what's new on Wowhead, and this week is no exception. So as ever, we have got our beta key we have our beta key giveaway going on this week. And because of Brewfest coming right up, we are doing a Brewfest themed one. So what are we asking people to do this week?
Basically just have any achievement from Brewfest completed, and you can enter. And if you've done Brewfest in a past year and have an achievement done, then you are set. We always get questions about this every week, like, oh, if I already did it, can I not enter? And if you've already completed it, you can enter. If you are doing it this week, you can enter. If you never complete it, you can't enter. It's as simple as that.
Exactly. So if you had this character with the Brewfest achievements that's already completed and you've got it verified, linked to your profile, you are good to go. And most people, I think, have done Brewfest at some point.
Yeah, and I believe that Blizzard has fixed a lot of the Armory character issues. So that is pretty good.
Definitely,
there's no help. My character isn't uploading. What do I do?
Fingers crossed.
Showing like it's 3 weeks ago. So all that is fixed, and we're really happy.
Yay! Fingers crossed it doesn't break again. If they could just stop doing server maintenance for a little while, just so we could run our competitions for you guys, that'd be lovely. So that aside, we're still going to do our usual beta key giveaway with the show. So another 100 keys, because we're, in a generous mood again.
We have lots of keys.
We have lots of keys. Yeah, we have lots of keys, and obviously, we want to give them to people. There's no benefit to us from holding on to them, so we're trying to give them out in as many ways as possible. So this week, 100 keys, and we're going to go to a slightly different method, but you've been watching earlier versions of the show, episodes of the show, you'll already know about this method. We're doing the Twitter-related one this time. So in the past, we've asked you to hunt down our favorite item, our favorite pet, and this week we're asking you to find our favorite mount. So what you're going to need to do is go onto Wowhead, go to our user page. There's a subtle hint here that I'm going to share with you right now that we're both staff. So there might be some kind of page where there's a list of staff through which you can find your way to our user pages where there's a possibility that we might mention our favorite mounts. So what you need to do, once you've located this page that may or may not be on the staff page on Wowhead, you should go find us on Twitter. So I always do this the wrong way around. I'm on Olivia D. Grace. It's right there. If you're wondering how to spell Olivia D. Grace, it's there. Perk is on Peculiar. It's at the top of her screen there. So you need to follow us because we're going to direct message you your keys, okay? And we are going to do 50 each. It's going to take us a while, so you'd better be really grateful.
Yes. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Wow.
Oh, yeah. So it's going to take...
That's good. We love you guys.
We love you guys, exactly. So it's going to take us a little while, so you better be really nice. What we need you to do is message us with the following, and it's important that you get these 3 things right. So if you're doing my one, you need to message me with @OliviaDGrace, because otherwise it won't reach me. I won't be able to see it, and that's sad. You're going to need to use the hashtag #OliviaBetaGiveaway. And you're going to need to send me the link to any version of my favorite mount. So obviously, you know, when you get a mount, there's a spell and there's the item. There's various different ways of expressing it, but just link me any one of those on Wowhead and you are good to go. So @OliviaDGrace, hashtag #OliviaBetaGiveaway, link to mount. So if you're doing perks one, you need to go to @Peculiar, and again, you need to be following us because we're going to DM you. @Peculiar, the link to Perk's favorite mount, and hashtag #PerkBetaGiveaway. The spelling of these hashtags is going to be in the post on Wowhead. So if you're struggling with the spelling of the hashtags, head over to the post on Wowhead and you'll be able to find it there. And we're going to link to the hashtags and make it really easy for you. It makes me so sad. The amount of people who I get who don't quite fulfill all of those requirements.
Yeah, and you have to link our mounts, not your favorite mount.
Exactly.
Like,
but we
don't tell me, don't be like, hey, Perk, you know, I really like how this werewolf looks. So you should too. You can't win a key.
Exactly. But much as we love to know what your favorite mounts are, and you know, if there's room in the tweet, feel free to link us both. Let us know what your favorite mount is if you want to. But what you need to do is tell us our favorite mount. So if you're linking me one of the basic horde wolves, it's wrong. That's not right. God, I really don't like those mounts.
So that's why I use that as an example.
Exactly. Yeah. So make sure that you're doing those 3 things at us. Favorite mount, our favorite mount link on Wowhead, and the hashtag #OliviaBetaGiveaway or PerkBetaGiveaway, and then you'll be good to go, entered to win one of 50 each, so 100 in total, Warlords of Draenor beta keys. This is 10 times bigger than any of the other Twitter giveaways we've done. This is a big Twitter giveaway. We're going to be doing a lot of DMing. This is going to be hard work, but we love it and we love doing it because we love you guys. And so Perk, as ever, ton of information on what has been going on Wowhead this week from the technical side of things. I know Perk has been working really, really hard this week, you've been doing a lot of Lua coding, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'll probably talk about that next, but essentially, like, our transmog sets and item sets and a lot of cool features are based on our devs making me a framework, and I do Lua, and then the database has all these cool, unique perks. So I've been doing a lot of that this week, and I'm sort of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a very long process.
Yeah.
But we do have some other things live this week that I'm really happy to share. We are in the middle of sort of revamping all of our garrison databases, like buildings, followers, missions, and the buildings part is already live. So you can browse the list of buildings as before, but we now have what is a gallery view. So when you go to /buildings, by default, you see pictures of all of the buildings. So if you don't really know what you want, but you're like, oh, I heard there's a building with a cool tank, you can just see the picture of the tank on Wowhead and click on it, and then go to this page talking about all the gadgets you can get at this special Gearworks. So that looks totally awesome. We have separate areas for Alliance and Horde buildings, so you can browse like the art for like one or both at the same time, and as usual, the traditional text view. So we're really happy with that, and you know, next week we'll have even more garrison updates to share because we're sort of revising everything because Blizzard keeps adding stuff to it.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you've been doing a lot of work on scaling as well, haven't you? Like spell scaling.
So because the raid difficulties are not for a static number of players in Warlords. So Mythic still is at 20, but you're going to have normal scaling, you're going to have heroic scaling between 10 and 30 players. We thought it would make more sense if you're looking up a boss's ability, you can see how much it hits for based on the number of players in your raid, because it does vary. So we put these little sliders underneath all of the tooltips, and you can even type in how many players you want, and it will update. And also, we have a little drop-down menu for the difficulty. So you can be like, oh, you know, in Mythic, this hits really hard, but in LFR, you know, it doesn't hit as hard, plus it doesn't do, you know, this extra scary component. So we're really happy with that. If you've used our heirloom item pages, it's exactly the same sort of thing. You know, you just sort of input the level of what you want to see, and then it pops up. So yeah, we think that will be pretty useful, especially in 6.0 when Siege of Orgrimmar has these new difficulties and you can have, 10 people or 30 or 22.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
So
super
that is
useful
cool.
tool.
Yeah.
It's just going to make your life so much easier when you're looking at boss abilities, and particularly if you're ranking up through the different difficulties. Like, if you've done a ton of the raiding on the Warlords Flex difficulty, and then you want to go up to, sorry, the Warlords Normal difficulty, excuse me, and then you want to go up to the Heroic level difficulty, it's just going to be able to show you in really easy, understandable ways different abilities, new abilities, and if there's ones which have numerical things, like, say, for example, does blank to 3 players, you can see the point at which that goes up to 4 players, or the random chance
I don't think
stuff.
that's in the data, sadly.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So no, it was just the numbers of the...
Everything else is there.
No, you're right, of course. It's the they're actually doing it with the random chance of additional targets as well. I'm sorry, that was completely wrong. I was thinking of the numbers and thinking along those lines. But yeah, there's a ton of really cool information there, particularly with extra effects in different difficulties. So you can see how an ability is a normal, heroic, mythic. Really, really cool stuff. And I know you've been doing a ton of work as well on item improvements, like stat weights and specialization stuff on the boss pages.
So, now that we have all the boss loot tables, people are like wanting to figure out like what gear is the best from which boss, like what they have to look forward to or what stats will seem good for their classes based on their talents. So we've been getting more of our filters and stuff, into shape. Like we've had our basic filters working for a while, but people got used to them. They're like, oh, we want stat weights to work. So we've updated our stat weights to work for Warlords of Draenor items. Now, this means that you have to be on wad.wowhead.com/items in order to have, all the Warlords versions of things working. And if you go underneath sort of the generic filter area, you'll see something called stat weights. Now, if you go to show details, that means you can enter in any sort of stat combination you want, because with all like the buffs and nerfs, everything is changing every week. So we don't have, preset stat weights now, although we will be getting them from SimCraft closer to Warlords launch. But in the interim, you can be like, oh, show details. I want versatility to be, ranked at 50, and I want mastery because it's more important to be at, 70, for example. So if you input those numbers and play around, you'll then get a list of Warlords gear generated for you in order of what's most useful to least useful based on the stats you value. So obviously that's, pretty useful, better than, looking through like every weapon in the game. And we're very happy that it's now working this week. And along those lines, we also have loot specialization working across the site for all Warlords items. So you can say, I want to see all the items I'll get if I bonus roll as a Mistweaver, or, I'm on a boss's page and I only want to see the loot for monks. Yeah. And now it will like filter all the loot that you can see for a particular class or spec. So we think with those two things will really help raiders determine, what gear they want, or like what's their, best in slot list, or if they have any suggestions like, hey, like no bosses in this instance drop a weapon that's good for my spec. Maybe we can, and the other instance has like 5. Maybe we can spread this out. Yeah. So we're really happy that we're making a lot of progress, sort of with like the icing on the cake. We've been doing a ton of item stuff, and it's really cool to move into sort of the refinement stage.
Definitely. Yeah, so it's really, really cool.
That's it. I know my camera cut out in the middle of talking about cool stuff last week, so I think I covered all the main stuff.
Exactly. So we're good. We're very happy to have Perk still with us, even though she wasn't last week. We're very happy to have you still here. But yeah, a ton of stuff going on Wowhead as ever. And the only other little thing we wanted to do was kind of a sneaky little tease that we've got a really cool giveaway coming next week. And, we love to give you guys stuff. We keep going on about this, and we're just reinforcing that by giving you even more things. We can't tell you what it is just yet, but keep your eyes peeled in the early part of next week for a really cool new giveaway on Wowhead with some very special items. That's what we're going to say. So there you go. There's some tease. There's a hype train for you. But yeah, we've had a ton of other stuff to talk about this week. So much stuff. And we're already at 52 minutes. So this is going to be a long old show. So we have not even mentioned yet that we had beta builds. We've kind of touched on the first one we had this week with the Legendary Cloak, and also the achievement in the second one. But then, of course, that's not all that was in these beta builds. We've had a ton of other stuff as well. So we've got a little update that isn't necessarily related to the beta builds, but the information is in there, that about the BlizzCon pet. So nobody will be that surprised to find out that it's a Murloc. And it is a very cute
Those guys
little
are
Murloc.
excited.
Those guys are very excited. That little kick light, look at their little faces. They're so excited that it's a Murloc. And and it's a Murloc that, and you know, I think when Perk and I both first saw it, we were like, oh, it's a Garrosh Murloc.
I know, we're terrible with lore.
But he doesn't have
It was an
hair.
orc.
It was an orc. Yeah, it was an orc, and it had the axe and shoulder like little pads, and it looked very much like Garrosh to me.
Angry.
He was angry, yeah, and you know, apparently Garrosh doesn't have hair. We knew that. We know that Garrosh doesn't have hair, but the little orc has some little braided hair going on there, so it's not Garrosh. It's apparently Grom, and the pet name which Perk found in the data was the Gromlock.
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting because we found the icon a few weeks ago. And then I'm like, oh, the icon's name is Gromlock. And if I search in the database for things with that icon, I can see that there's this temporary named pet called BC01, which obviously is for BlizzCon. And it has these warrior abilities, and there's a spell that is called like Murgle, and it's like this AoE howling roar that will scare critters. So that was kind of
we
cool.
had it.
Yeah.
We had it hiding away in the data, and then they announced it on Twitter, and we were able to sort of put two and two together. And
yeah, and now in the new build, they changed the name because I guess, you know, cat's out of the bag, and now it actually is called Gromlock, for real.
Great. Yes, he is kind of adorable. Yeah, it's exciting. I think that's going to be coming whether you buy the virtual ticket or obviously the real ticket.
Yeah,
you're going to get that. You're going to get that whatever you get. So if you're going to BlizzCon virtually or in person, you can look forward to an adorable little Gromlock for your pet collection. We also had some news about hogs. The little miniature hogger pet has fallen by the wayside. A tragedy.
I know, it's the
tragedy.
ultimate decoy.
Oh, the tragedy of hogs. He's been confirmed as removed.
If you were following along from the start of beta, basically they've always been attaching him to achievements that later get different rewards, I guess, to sort of throw a red herring into the mix.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, oh, he's the 10th anniversary pet. Oh, he's like the South Shore pet. And they keep, you know, the 10th anniversary pet is a Molten Corgi, and the, you know, compete in South Shore Terran Mill is a special title. And I don't know if they expected that people would be like, oh, this model isn't very cool, or like this pet doesn't seem very cool, whatever. But people got really attached to the pet because it's a mini hogger. And I think people are sad.
Yeah, I'm sad to see him go. I think it's always sad when you see pets and you hear about them. Like, do you remember Pierre? Like, it took him so long to eventually get into the game. Like, Pierre and the Skyclaw, the engineering mount, which eventually turned into the golem, whatever it's called. But yeah, it's always sad to see them go because you get attached to pets, particularly when they're little baby hoggers. Oh, sad times.
But yeah, so that was something that, you know, obviously, like, the data mine is always changing. It was nice that Blizzard clarified, because people would be like, oh, you know, Hogs is totally coming. He's in the data.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly, like, the data that we pull is only as good as what Blizzard puts in. So we can't always tell if something's final, if something's completely done, particularly when it's things like pets, which they can take out at any time, like poor old hogs. But on good news, we've had over 20 things added to the toy box. So that was a huge update to the toy box. Perk has written this amazing toy box guide. And it's not only amazing because it lists everything in the toy box. It's amazing because where we know already, it gives you a guide of where to get literally every single item that's currently in game and also in the toy box, which is insane, by the way. That's amazing. It's such a good guide. So you've updated that to include all of this stuff.
Yeah, we've had about an equal number of items you get from Draenor, and then also items that will be coming in updated holidays, which I'm really looking forward to because Brewfest starts this weekend, and there is some sort of like sausage fire barbecue that you can get, but it's not, we can't get it on live this week. But I guess if I did Brewfest on the beta, I would totally get this like sausage fire. So,
that sounds hilarious.
There's like, I think like Winter Veil has zebra pillows. Love is in the Air has some prismatic beam. Like I said, tons of Warlords items. There's, you know, like Alliance and Horde PvP banners. There's this really creepy like egg that has like spiders that are crawling on you. That's kind of creepy.
Oh man, that sounds terrifying.
There's tons of things.
Yeah.
So it was a big update, and we want the guide to be really awesome because you can start collecting toys in that pre-patch. So in October you can get all the non-Warlords toys out of the way before you're busy in Warlords of Draenor.
I think the one really cool thing about the toy box, which definitely this guide echoes, is that not only is it a place to get all of those things out of your bags and out of your void storage at last, but it's also a really nice little collector's like checklist to go through and actually collect up all of these toy items. Like, it appeals to me definitely as like someone who likes to collect the, like, I'm not that excited about mounts, but I love certain mounts, as we'll see in the competition. But I love toys. Like, I love the little toys, particularly the transformation ones, like that turn you into something or change your appearance temporarily. I just love those. And so to me, it's like a little checklist. And that's why I love Perks Guides so much, because it makes it easier for me to collect them. But in the beta build, we've also had a ton of information about challenge modes added. So testing started this week for all 8 dungeons in challenge modes. We've got a bunch of rewards added in. So there's a bronze, similar to last time, there's a title for bronze.
It's the Indomitable title for bronze, and then for silver, it's the Challenger's War Yeti. I think it was added a while ago, but when we featured it again, people were like, oh my god, this thing, I couldn't live without it. So I'm like, good, I'm glad we featured it again.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, different from Mop, it's actually like one mount, and you just get that mount. You don't have to like choose between colors.
Which is nice.
For gold, you get the awesome transmog weapons, which we've previewed before. They have awesome animations. You have to pay 1,000 gold to buy them from the vendor, and there's like 20 options or something like that. So that's for gold. What I thought was really cool when I was looking through the data is that there are all these titles that seem to be associated with getting the realm best time. And they're pretty cool. Like, for getting the fastest time in Blackrock Spire, you're the Lord or Lady of Blackrock. So for some reason, I think that's very cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a really nice addition, because it was very transient in Mist. Like, you didn't really have like any kind of badge to show off to the world to say, look, I did this cool thing that's really hard to do.
I mean, they temporarily added in titles at one point, but then it's all going away. So I don't know if these will also be going away.
Well, I hope they stay.
But they seem really cool for now. And it's neat how, the titles are in at launch versus being added
definitely.
Patches later.
Yeah, and I think you've obviously got the titles coming in at the end of this season of challenge modes, which will be like, if you ever held the realm best time for a challenge mode dungeon, you'll get a certain title, and there's various other titles which give you which are given to you for things like guild group completion and so on and so forth. So those are sticking around. But it's really nice to have the individual ones of the dungeon. The Lord of or Lady of blank sounds really, really cool to me. That's really exciting. So we've had a ton of updates. One of the exciting updates actually was the dungeon journal. Finally, we got loot in the dungeon journal. It's not taken that long. It's taken a really long time to get loot into the dungeon journal. So we can now actually see, obviously we've had the loot that's been data mined. We can now actually see which dungeons, which bosses drop which loot, the item levels. So we've got a range of around 530 to 630 from the dungeons, right?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big range.
Yeah, that's a big range. And what's also really interesting is that like the bosses don't have, every boss doesn't have uniquely named loot. So for example, like boss 1 in Bloodmaw Slag can drop a 530 version of something that you get in Blackrock Spire Heroic from boss 3.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting. It's sort of like it's almost Diablo style, where like based on the level of the zone or content you're doing, you get that scaled down or up version of the item. And it's also really interesting because there's like 40 items associated from each boss.
Yeah, there's so many items. There's
maybe
a
it's
ton.
Like personal. Maybe there's some sort of personal loot involved where, if you I don't know, if you like get an item from that boss or you get like an extra chance at an item, it's for your spec, and that's why there's 5 leather belts.
Yeah, that could well be it. I looked at the loot tables, and we had the first build, which unfortunately I had to go really shortly after it came in. So I was really annoyed. Like, I keep abandoning Perk, and I feel so bad about it. But Perk got her revenge by having to be gone when the second one launched. Unfortunately for Perk, her revenge wasn't very effective because it was tiny by comparison to the first one that she had to do all by herself. So yeah, the second one, I was going through the dungeon journal when RU, who's one of our data miners, sent it to me. And I was thinking, oh my god, there must have been more items added because this is such a huge list of loot. But it's crazy how much loot these guys drop. So yeah, I think it's got to be. If there's personal loot coming or personalization of loot, I'm really excited to see that. I think that's great. The amount of times when you're farming out gear in dungeons and you just get that wrong thing over and over.
Or it's like you're running the dungeon and you're hoping to get gear for a certain spec.
Yeah.
And then the guy who's not that spec is like, oh, I'm gonna roll on this thing.
Exactly, like some hunter rolling need on my intellect gear. Get off my stuff, hunters. Yeah, exactly that. So it's really, really nice and it's exciting. We'll definitely have to keep an eye on that and see what comes of it. So we also had some more information on tier 17 gear. And this was clarified by Owen Langren on Twitter, because I think a lot of people have been quite confused about exactly what this deal is.
I was even confused.
Yeah, no, me too. And I'm really glad that Owen Langren is one of the item designers for World of Warcraft. And he's been very, very outgoing on Twitter about helping us out where there's been lack of clarity on the gear. So Perk, he's been talking about how the tier 17 gear can have kind of augmentations in the sense of things like the random allocation of sockets, tertiary stats, Warforged. What is it that he's been talking about?
So if you've been raiding in MoP, you've realized that some of your gear has a chance to be Warforged. And your tier gear is always the same, but your off non-tier gear can have that chance to be better in item level. So they've expanded that, special, perks on gear idea. So now it's like, oh, well, your gear not only has a chance to be Warforged, but it could have a stat like, movement speed or, being indestructible, or it could have an extra socket on it, or it could have the socket and Warforged.
Or it could have all three, presumably.
Right.
Like
That's a really small chance, though.
Really tiny chance, yeah.
So not to be confused, these are not the same things as, oh, I got a Timeless Isle piece of gear and I clicked on it and it gave me a random assortment of crit and mastery. That is totally different from augmentations. So you're not going to have, like, if there's like a secondary set on an item, like crit, mastery, haste, that is permanent. This is just like additional stuff you get.
Exactly.
But the confusion became from because people thought it was going to be like MoP, where just the non-tier items had, the chance to be Warforged. And when the tier 7 tier gear was put on Flask Guitar, like a special beta vendor, people were like, hey, why does this tier gear have like a random socket on? Is this a bug? Like, no, it's not a bug. They want tier gear to follow this same system as everything else, where it's not like, oh, I got my chest, I'm set for the next, 6 months. They want you, I guess, to debate whether, this chest is better than your non-tier chest, if maybe getting a tier chest with an extra socket would like pull it ahead of something, that has better secondary stat on a different item. So I guess they think that it makes it fun, and it is very Diablo style loot, which
definitely
Souls has done really well with. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think it's sort of, there's definitely pros and cons to this as a change, and I think it's one of the pros perhaps is that it means that you are likely to continue to value tier gear, as Perk's been saying. Like, your tier gear now has that long tail system attached to it, where you're not going to be in the position of, oh, I got this tier piece, which should feel really good because I'm building a set and I'm getting set bonuses, but actually there's this other piece that has the chance to be better because it could be Warforged, or is it pristine? Is that the word they're using now?
I mean, it's hard to tell because it is still kind of a mess.
Yeah. Let's say Warforged for now.
But, if you were familiar with Warforged in Tier 16, it's the exact same concept.
Exactly, yeah. So using Warforged for now, like, you've got the chance for all of this tier stuff to have the same random chances there as other tokens, as other pieces of gear, excuse me. And so one thing that I wasn't sure about is, so you're still getting the token off of a boss, right? Like, you're not, it's kind of like the Timeless Isle. Okay, so we've already said how it's dissimilar to the Timeless Isle in that your secondary stats on these items are fixed. So if I get 3 of the same, if I'm the luckiest person in the world and get 3 of the same chest, and I use all of the tokens, I'm going to get the exact same secondary stats. So if the first one is crit and multi-strike, the second one and the third one are both going to be crit and multi-strike. It's possible that I'll get more of them if I manage to get one that's Warforged, and it's possible that I'll get something else like a tertiary stat, like Pert mentioned, movement speed, or a socket. But we're not going to see those until after they've confirmed, sorry, to clarify, jumping around a bit, they've confirmed in Warlords that the tokens, you don't have to go to a vendor. You can use them in your bag just like a Timeless Isle item.
Right, you just click.
Yeah, so you just right click or just click on it and it will then turn into a piece of gear just like the Timeless Isle. But we've all done the Timeless Isle, and we all know the irritation on the Timeless Isle is that you get like 7 different legs. Like it's happened on my mage. I got like 7 of the legs, and I used them, and they all had crap stats. Like there's an optimum stat set, and I got none of them. So this could be the same with tier.
Like, well, I guess drama is the wrong word because you know, people are pretty mature. But it's like, how do you determine who to give an item to if you don't know what the item is?
Exactly, yeah. Like,
oh, you know, I want my raiders that don't have Warforged pieces to, you know, have, I want to give these items to them and hopefully they'll turn to Warforged. I'm like, well, it's like, well, what if they didn't? Then would it have been better to give it to, you know, like an alternate raider or someone else? It just seems like to be too much of a headache. Yeah,
exactly. And I feel like there's sort of, it's not insurmountable, of course, like none of these problems are really, but it's just more difficult. Like, you know, if you've got someone who is like gearing an out, but someone who's like a real key part of your raid team who hasn't got the Warforged item, then, you know, do you give it to someone who you know it's going to be a big upgrade from like non-tier to tier, or do you give it to someone who's like likely to be there every week and you know that they need the Warforged version or they need the one with the socket or something along those? Like, it just adds that difficulty because those items bind to you once you use the token. So it's not like you can then be like, oh, oops, pass it on.
Or like, what happens if someone's like, oh, I really want this tertiary stat, like speed, like, you know, like I need more speed on my gear, so I'll just keep pieces this person. But someone's like, hey, I'm new to the raid, like I need a Warforged version. Obviously, Warforged is better than, you know, speed.
Exactly. It's just, it makes it's strange, and like I don't have a problem necessarily with them putting these stats on the gear. I just think that it could be better handled. Like maybe they can make the pieces temporarily tradable or something, or like something along those lines, just to alleviate the loot master problems which this is going to bring about. And of course, I think,
and I mean, just to say, like, I'm sure you can still kill a boss if people have the wrong stats on it. But, you know, it's less of a hassle just to know what you're getting going into it.
Definitely. And like loot drama is almost always a thing. Like unless you have some real hardcore, like this is the finite, this is the order in which people will get these pieces type of setup, then loot drama is always going to be a problem. And it's something which happens to everyone from no doubt the very top guilds right down to the most casual. There's always loot drama, and people, you raid to upgrade. You know, you're raiding to get gear. So if there's things that are standing in your way of understanding that progression, it makes it frustrating and it makes people have unnecessary dramas.
Yeah, or it's like, oh, you know, well, we all got our 4Ps, but this person just happened to get, how did it even work with DKP? Like, if someone just naturally gets the War, you know, all like their Warforged versions first. It's like, oh, well, now they spent more DKP, but they just got lucky, and you know, when they were in the queue and got all their Warforged.
Exactly. Like this, it's going to be a complete nightmare for people who are working out the gearing of their raid team. So that's a bit of a trial, but it's far from the end of the world. Don't get us wrong. Like, it's not going to stop anyone like having, like, maybe it'll be that 0.1% that gets you the kill on the boss, but most of the time it's not going to be a huge difference. It's just like, it's an irritation that seems unnecessary, but I don't think they should be taking these stats off of gear. They just need to make it easier for guilds to handle it.
Exactly.
So every week we answer your questions. You can tweet them to us with the hashtag Wowhead for Wowhead Weekly, which is WH Weekly. And we will answer your questions on the show. We are running super long today, so just a couple of questions. And actually, one of them, which came in from Maggie Berry, said, can the tier pieces also have tertiary stats and sockets? So we kind of clarified that already, Maggie.
They do,
I added that in because I saw it and I was like, oh, that's a good question. Let's make sure we hit that. But we've already done that. So yes, Maggie, that's the answer to your question. And we've just been through that. So good question. And the other one, it comes in from Dalton Imperial. And he says, when will heirlooms be upgradable to level 90? This is
when Blizzard wants them to be.
Exactly. This is an easy question for us to answer because there wasn't exactly a sort of obvious pattern of when they added the upgrade to 85 into heirlooms. So we just don't know when heirlooms will be upgradable to 90. I wouldn't be surprised to see it coming at some point in the Warlords of Draenor expansion.
Yeah, probably. They spoke about removing the heirlooms because they have like a bigger system in store for them. So I assume when that new system comes into place, they'll maybe have an upgrade system for everything. Who knows?
Precisely. And they also, worth bearing in mind when talking about heirlooms, that they spoke in the past about the heirloom tab, like the account-wide heirloom thing in the collection section with your mounts, your pets, and in a Warlords of Draenor toy box. that they had the heirlooms tab planned for that, but that it was pushed back. So maybe part of this heirloom stuff is that heirloom tab is what they're waiting for.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, exactly. So then that would probably also help. Like I know, for example, that on my EU account at least, I've got like 6 or 7 pairs of the leather shoulders. So maybe I can trade in some of those for some upgrades. Who knows? But yeah, there's definitely, we have no way of telling, unfortunately, when they will be upgradable to level 90. But definitely keep an eye out for heirloom changes coming in. We wouldn't like to obviously say patch 6.1 because we don't know at this point, but in a future patch, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the reason they're taking heirlooms out is to build the heirlooms tab. I'm excited about that. So there we go. That's a long old show this week, for which we apologise. We had a lot to get through, as I'm sure you can understand. So thank you so much, as ever, for watching the show. Do remember to tweet at us with our favourite mounts who win a Warlords beta key, one of 50 each this week, so a ton of keys to give away. You can follow me on Twitter at Olivia D. Grace, it's over there. You can follow Perk on Twitter at Peculiar, it's above her screen to the right hand side. You can follow Wowhead on Wowhead, it's helpfully spelled out just down there. And you can obviously visit wowhead.com for all of the information we've talked about in this week's show, all of the information on live news, on the beta, on the PTR, on just about everything that is in any way related to Warlords of Draenor. As well, our sister site Zam has started doing an awesome new show with our lovely friend Lindsay Geektron, and she is doing an update every week on the gaming news. Very short, bite-sized update, about under 7 minutes normally, so do check that out. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Bye bye.